So we are back in our story of Exodus. We're going to be picking.
We're still with Moses.
Huh?
We're still with Moses.
We are still with Moses. That is correct. Moses. We finally got Moses away from the burning bush. He's very stubborn. So he is now headed for Egypt. So we're going to pick the story up. I just want to remind everybody about some of the. It helps to. There we go. It helps to have it on. So I just want to remind everybody where we're at. Remember last week we talked about Moses' wife, Zipporah. Zipporah saved the day, right?
Yes.
She was a help, right? And I heard something, and I thought, man, it's 1 week late. If I'd have heard that, I would have incorporated it in my lesson last week. But think about this. We talked about, if you'll remember, we talked about when God said he was going to make woman, right? He called her a help, right? And we talked about what kind of help that was. It was strength. It was all that. And I was listening to a guy. He was talking about the same thing. Go figure, right? And he said in the Hebrew language, that word was used for help, just like we talked about last week. It was used for help, but it was used for help that must come from outside. So in other words, Adam needed strength that he did not have, right? He needed help that he could not provide. And the gentleman that was making this point likened it to drowning. When you're drowning, right, you do not have the strength to rescue yourself or get back to shore. Someone must come and get you and bring you back. So that strength has to come from outside. And I thought, oh, that was such a great deal, because we saw that in that story. Moses was not able to perform or to do what he needed to do. The strength had to come from somewhere else. It came from his wife. And that was her role, to give him the strength he did not have. So, it's a complementary relationship, not one of subservience. Okay? All right, so Zipporah saves the day. She performs the circumcision ritual on her son. Moses meets Aaron and shows him the miracle. So remember that when God was giving Moses his commission, Moses actually was given 3 miracles that he could work on demand. Okay? Now, everything else that Moses is going to do, and we'll see that as we go through the story, God is going to tell Moses, okay, now here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. But Moses was given 3 that he could do anytime he wanted. He could throw his staff down, or have Aaron throw his down, and it would become a snake. And then he could pick it up, and it would become a staff again. He could take his hand, put his hand in his cloak, and when he pulled it out, it would be leprous. I mean, to the point of it was obvious. Then he could put it back,
and it was gone.
And it was gone, right? It was healed. And he could do that anytime anyone questioned him, right? And then the other one, you remember what the other one was? He could take water and pour it out, and as it hit the ground, it turned into blood. Okay? And so, and we see this in the scriptures, that Moses will work these miracles in front of the elders of Israel as his calling card, right? As his business card. We talked a little bit about that last week. If you've ever worked in an industry where when you show up somewhere, you hand somebody your card, right? This was Moses' card. Hello, prophet of God, right? Throw my stick down. Oh, a snake! And don't worry, This was his bona fides, if you will. All right. Staff to serpent, leprosy, and the water to blood. Now, these miracles, like I said before, they are apparently available to Moses at Moses' discretion. He did not need God's permission or direction. He could do them according to his will. God had given him this permission, or at least that's what it looks like to me. Okay, so we're going to pick our story up, Exodus chapter 4. We're going to start to read the very first encounter with Moses. We got a little bit of a late start, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through all of it, although Jennifer's not here to fuss at me, so I don't know who's in the back with the kiddos.
It's Barbie.
So don't have a ginger snap at you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's Barbie back there.
I was gonna say that's a redhead joke. I'm not. Okay. All right. So let's pick up our story. So Moses and Aaron. And remember, we left off. Aaron had come out to meet Moses in the wilderness. Okay. So now Moses and Aaron returned to Egypt and called all the elders of Israel together. Aaron told them everything the Lord had told Moses, and Moses performed the miraculous signs as they watched. Okay, so the whole hand and blood and snake thing. Then the people of Israel were convinced that the Lord had sent Moses and Aaron, and when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshiped. Now remember what God told Moses. He said, I have seen my people. I have heard their cry. Tell them I am aware. Okay? And so this is the message that he's given. All right, so in these first few verses then, what do we see? In these first few verses, remember Moses' first fear. Remember what it was?
Being alive.
Huh?
That they wouldn't believe him.
They won't believe me. I'm going to show up and I'm going to say, God has sent me, and they're going to be like, yeah, right. God who? Right? They're not going to believe that anybody has sent me. So we see right here, he showed up, he did the three things God gave him to do, and what happened? They believed him. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
But don't you think he also had to get away from their fear of him, knowing that he was raised by Pharaoh?
I'm not sure that them knowing that Moses had been a prince of Egypt.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that is such a big deal anymore. Remember, it's been 40 years since anybody has seen Moses. 40 years. He's gone.
Well, it doesn't
now,
say
when he comes back, huh?
It doesn't say that Moses was worried about it. It just says his fear was that
they wouldn't believe him, right? But I mean, it's something that you might think, right? Now remember that God has already.
Still some of the people that were alive then were still alive.
More than likely, but God had told Moses, right? Everybody that seeks your life is gone. So everybody that was in government, the Pharaoh at that time, and the overseers and all that, they're all gone. Nobody has seen Moses. It's not like Moses has been coming back for vacations, right? Nobody has seen Moses for 40 years. Now remember, we talked a little bit about what it was like growing up Egyptian, right? That Moses had adopted the dress, the hairstyles, right? He made up like an Egyptian. Now he's coming back out of the wilderness. What does he look like? Midian shepherd.
Shepherd of the Lord.
Right. He's long hair, the robes, and all that entails. So when he shows up on the scene, I don't think that anybody looks at him and goes, oh, I remember you, right? So he shows up in an entirely different demeanor, entirely different look, with an entirely different mission, okay? So I'm not sure that there's a connection there. The elders believe him, the people believe him, okay? So they meet with the elders first. And remember that even though there are a couple or three, I can't remember now how many exactly it was, 2 or 3 million. There's a bunch of people. There's still a tribal people. So they have, each family has an elder that goes to the clan meetings, and the clan meetings go to the tribe meetings, and the tribe meetings go to the Hebrew meeting, right? So it's a little stair step, right? Everybody's got a representative somewhere. But the people believe him when he says, God has seen you, right? And what do we see? We see a revival break out. They bow down and they begin to worship, okay? And sometimes in the midst, now remember where the people are at. People of Israel, right? Life is not bad, but it's harsh. It's hard. They work for a living. They work hard for a living. They don't get any benefits from the culture, okay? They are second-class citizens. No, you don't get to own these kind of things. No, you don't get to buy these kind of things. You don't get to do these kind of things. That's where they're at, right? And so we see them there. And they have, and we saw this as we moved out of chapter 2, right? We saw that after 400 years, they began to call on God. They began to cry out to God. Now, and we'll cover this in a minute, but they don't have any real-time example of who God is, right? What are they worshiping? They're worshiping the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. They have all those stories. Now, we read a couple of them last week and the weeks before, right? Abraham, when God came down and visited with Abraham and made his covenant with him, right? We know that Jacob saw the ladder going up into heaven and the angels ascending and descending. We know that Joseph could interpret the dreams. He had the wisdom of God to interpret dreams, and we saw how God worked in his life. But remember, all of that has been 400 years or more ago. And so the people have told these stories to each other, to their children, again and again and again. But it's not like they can say, oh, God was seen working in the neighborhood next to us, right? It's all back then. Now, couple that, again, I want you to get back in the mindset here. Couple that with the fact, where are they living? They're living in a culture that has multiple gods. So they're living in a religious culture, a culture that will accept that you say you worship God. Oh, that's great. That's great. We worship God too, And for this, we worship the God of the Nile. And for that, we worship the sun god. And for that, we worship the God of the underworld. And for that, we worship, right? And so it's just like Paul, if you remember, when Paul in the New Testament went to Greece, right? And he went up and he said, I have observed your devotions. And you are a superstitious or a religious people. He said, I even saw that you had an altar to the unknown God. They were so worried about missing one, they didn't want to offend nobody, right? So he said, but it's this unknown God I want to declare to you today, right? And so he began to preach and introduce them to the one true God, right? So here we have a group of people where God is a story. He's a part of the lore, the heritage that they tell one another, but they're immersed. It's a little bit like America today, right? Mm-hmm. We meet on Sundays and Wednesdays, and we tell each other stories out of the Bible. But when we go outside these doors, where are we? We're in a culture that worships
everything
else. Mm-hmm. Money, power, success, good looks. Right?
Yeah.
That's why, you know, some people, it's boggled my mind for years how there are some people in this society, in this culture, who are famous. And do you know why? Now, I get it if you're a baseball player, right, who hit 715 home runs in a career. That's a noteworthy achievement, okay? I get it if you're a politician who has successfully brought peace, right, to some warring area of the world. That's a notable achievement. Fame in there. If your name was Neil Armstrong and you took one small step for man, yeah, that was for you, brother. That's a notable achievement, okay? That's a notable achievement. But to be famous for doing nothing, you know, oh, I have a reality show. Really? What's on your reality show? Oh, the camera just follows me around the house and I do things, and you're famous? Okay? We worship fame, popularity. Okay? And so we see this revival break out because Moses has told them, right? Moses has come back and he has told them, God sees you. Sometimes that's all we need to know. Sometimes in the midst of trial, it is incredibly uplifting, heartening to know that God sees me. You know, if you've been keeping up with the Chosen, right? There's some things there that I kind of go, but I know what they're trying to do. I understand what they're trying to do. But there's one scene in there that I thought was incredibly well done, and that's where the disciple was under the tree, under the fig tree, and he was devastated, right? And he thought God had turned his back. And then when he meets Jesus, right? I want to say it's Philip. Is it Philip? It's not Philip. Nathaniel. Oh, senior moment. Nathaniel. And Jesus meets Nathaniel and he says, Nathaniel, I need you to understand something. I didn't turn my face away from you. And the moment that shows up on Nathaniel's face when he realizes God sees me. God knows me. I mean, I want you to think about it. Most of us have a confidence problem. Mm-hmm. We don't think we're all that important to God. After all, what am I?
Because we feel like sometimes he's not there.
Yeah,
but it's not that he's not there. He's
just not here with me. He's just not paying attention to me, right? Because
he's
who am I?
waiting for his own time, like.
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's not there yet.
But we have a confidence problem. Who am I that God should know my name? Not only who am I that God should know my name, I mean, after all, I bet everybody in here can call the name of the President of the United States. But can he call yours?
No.
See, and we have this confidence problem. So I know God is up there, and God knows my name, but is he really paying attention to me?
He knows every step we take.
Well, that's true.
Every move we make.
But sometimes we feel like
he's not watching.
He's not watching. Sometimes we feel like I'm all alone. And that moment in that show, right, where he said, I never turned my eyes from you. I was watching you the whole time. And the look on his face when he realizes, God knows me. God loves me. God is with me. This is where they're at. They've suddenly realized they have been praying to God, and then Moses and Aaron shows up and they say, hey, we got a message from God. He says, I know. I see you. I'm aware, and I am taking action. And so they begin, there's a revival, right? They begin to worship. You need to know occasionally that you are not alone, right? That he still watches over you. And we do. Like Sister said a minute ago, sometimes we get to a place where we feel like we are alone. Anybody ever been there? I've been there. I raised both hands because I'm there a lot more than anybody else. Okay?
Well, that's what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. I'm alone. I am alone. So I told you we're going to kind of cover a little bit of that in the lesson tonight. And here God has sent Moses, and he says, no, you're not alone. I'm there. I know. Now, it's important what Sister said that, you know, and we're going to get to that because that's part of this story too. It's all got to come around God's time, right? It's all got to come around God's time. You see, they're getting happy because they're like, okay, God sees us. He's aware. He's going to start working. Boy, we're going to get up tomorrow morning.
It's not going to be like 10 minutes from now.
Exactly. It's not Jack in the Box. Right? When I was a kid, this newfangled store came up to selling hamburgers. You know what it was called? Jack in the Box.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, McDonald's hadn't got here yet. They were still in California.
That thing up one time.
Huh?
They blew that thing up one time.
So McDonald's was still in California, right? But Jack in the Box was here.
Yeah.
And you could pull around, oh my God. And the little jingle on the radio was what? Come as you like, come as you are. Right? Jack in the Box. No.
I don't remember.
Oh yeah. Anyway, so you pulled up, and you ordered at the window. Well, actually, you didn't order at the window. You ordered at the box with the clown head sticking out of it. Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
You know? And hello, welcome to Jack in the Box. You know, and you ordered, and then you, yeah. Then you drove around to the window. It was amazing. In 2.5 minutes, you had a stale hamburger and soggy French fries. Who knew? Okay. No, it was better than that. But the point is, a lot of times, and that's where the people of Israel are here, and Jackbox hadn't even been invented yet, right? Oh, well, if God's on the scene, right, things are going to start happening now. And God is telling, he never said that. He said, oh, no, I got a plan. It's going to take me a minute. Be patient. And that's a part of the
That's not human
the
nature.
lesson, ma'am.
It's not human nature. Human wants it now.
Well, yeah, we want it now. We want it right now. All right. So let's pick up the story in chapter 5, verse 1. After this presentation to Israel's leaders, Moses and Aaron went and spoke to Pharaoh. So they met with the elders. They showed them all this. The elders got happy. Moses and Aaron said, now we're going to Pharaoh, and we're going to tell him we headed out into the desert for a little while. And they told him, in other words, they're speaking to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says.
Mm-hmm.
Let my people go so that they may hold a festival in my honor in the wilderness. Is that so? Retorted Pharaoh. And who is the Lord? Why should I listen to him and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord. I will not let Israel go. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Sam, I hate
Okay. But Moses and Aaron persisted. The God of the Hebrews has met with us, they declared. So let us take a 3-day journey into the wilderness so we can offer sacrifices to our God. If we don't, he will kill us with a plague or with a sword. Okay? All right, so now they've delivered the message. All right, so what do we notice here? The first thing I want to draw your attention to, if you've been in church, particularly a Pentecostal type church, for any length of time at all, then you recognize the preface to anything that God says. Right? Did you catch it? Right? The first words out of Moses' mouth began a phrasing that has lasted in the delivery of prophetic statements from that moment to now, even into the modern church. Now, in the King James, it has a little more poetic eloquence, right? Thus saith the Lord, right? We got prophets saying that all the way down through the rest of the Old Testament. That's the first time it was ever spoken. Moses was, and why? Why did Moses do that? Okay? He did that because that's exactly what God said. If you go back and look, God said, when you talk to Pharaoh, you tell him this. God has said. So they said, this is what God said to us, okay?
So
In our modern English, our modern parlance, what thus saith the Lord is God said, or God is saying. Okay? And it like I said, if you've been in a Pentecostal-based church and all, you've heard that. You've heard
Baptist
that.
also.
Huh?
Baptist also.
Yeah. Now, in the Hebrew, it would be Yahweh, the God of Israel, says.
Right.
Right? Because remember, we talked about this. When Moses said, "Who shall I say has sent me?" And God says, I am the Creator. The Hebrew word that gets translated into that is Yahweh. Now, we talked a little bit about this, so I just want to cover it again. The Hebrew people, the Israelis, particularly of this time, were very, very sensitive to the name of God. Especially when Moses brought them tablets down off the mountain and said, "Thou shalt not take the name of thy God in vain." When I say that to you in this culture, your mind immediately goes to a specific curse word, right? The GD curse word. And we go, "Oh, that's taking the name of God in vain." But to the Hebrews, that was a minor thing. The Hebrews would not speak the name of God for any reason, for fear that they would get his attention. And he would turn and look at them and say, "Yes," and they wouldn't have anything important to say. Right?
The only time they would say it was when they worship.
Whenever they would worship him, or if they were in dire straits, right? They would call they're praying for deliverance, right? But they wouldn't just use the name, right? So that's why whenever you see in any of their writings, even today, they'll use the term God, but they'll just put G-D.
Mm-hmm.
They won't, because they don't want to use his name without good reason. Okay? But we see here that Moses is quoting the Lord, and he's invoking his name. Yahweh, the God of Israel, says to you, "Let my people go." Okay? Now, it's also interesting to note here, I thought this was ironic, that Moses was afraid that it was the people of Israel, his own people, who wouldn't believe him. And they believed, "Oh, he's here, yeah, you're a prophet of God. Yay!" And then when he got to Pharaoh, it was Pharaoh who was throwing up all the things that Moses was afraid of hearing. He just didn't hear them from his own people. Who is this God? I don't know this God. You know, who are you to tell me, right? So this was Pharaoh telling him this. All right, so notice the phrase 3 days, okay? So once again, he said, "Let us journey 3 days into the wilderness." Now remember, we talked about this at length when God first mentioned it to Moses, right? The term 3 days was what was known as a soft demand, right? You just didn't walk into the king's throne room and say, "Let my people go. We want to be free. We're marching out of here," right? And so diplomatic protocol required that you present that demand in a non-threatening way. So the equivalent of that phrase was, here it's rendered as 3 days. But what it meant in the culture was, we want to go off into the wilderness a ways and worship God. We'll be back soon.
When you see it.
Ish. Yeah, when you see me. When you see me coming, that's when we'll be coming. That's when we'll be done, right? And so it was an open-ended phrasing. This also helps explain Pharaoh's response, right? Wait, you want to go? Because remember, these people have become a very important part of the supply chain in Egypt. Okay, they're doing a lot of work. So this ambiguous demand basically they're making a demand, but they're doing it without attitude. Okay? Now, this is something that I found was very interesting as I studied through this, right? You notice in verse 3, after they say, let us go into the desert, they add this. If we don't go, he will kill us with a plague or the sword. Now, this phrasing will become important, and we'll see that in a minute. So, we don't see that God said that anywhere.
They went to get God's strength.
Well, that's true. But we don't see that God told Moses to say that. And God never said, Moses, you got to get him out of there. Or else I'm going to kill them all, right? We didn't see God say that. So I wonder, is this just a something that Moses and Aaron think, oh, this will sound good if we say it, right? It'll let Pharaoh know how serious the matter this is. Or if Moses has come to a revelation recently about how important obedience is.
Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
Okay. I was like, oh, I think, have we hit my time limit? How important obedience is. Because remember what just happened. We spent all last week studying about it. That was inside joke for a friend of ours who watches on the deal. He's like, you spent a whole week on circumcision, or a whole hour on circumcision? It was important, dude. But it was a point of disobedience in Moses' life. And God was adamant, right, that disobedience be corrected. And so I can't help but think that Moses has a newfound respect for obedience to God.
Right.
Right?
I said they went for strength.
Yes, yeah, exactly so. Because of what just happened to him in the way, he's like, yeah, don't test God. Don't test him. If he said it got to be done, go do it. Don't question him, just go do it. Okay? Kind of like husbands when they're talking about their wives. Right? Don't question it, just go do it. Just go. Yes, dear. Yes, dear, solve more problems. He's in the back going, yes, dear, yes, dear. All right, so one final note you may notice here. Moses referred to, in these verses, Moses referred to the people as the Hebrews. Not the children of Israel. And that is simply because that is how the Egyptians knew them. They knew them as Hebrews. When they first showed up in Egypt, right, they weren't known as Israelites. So let me ask you a question. You say, well, how come that?
That's yet to come.
What's that great big body of water just to the south of us?
Mm-hmm.
Gulf of Mexico. Wait, no, it's America. But how many of us have grown up for years calling it the Gulf of Mexico? Mexico. Okay? Right? So it's the same kind of thing. Yes, then there's been a recent name change, but it's still the same. Hebrews is a name recognizable.
It's still there. So.
Yeah, and it's still there. It's still a big body of water. Don't care what you call it.
Big nasty.
Okay.
The big nasty?
The big.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Pharaoh's not finished yet.
Nope.
Pharaoh's not finished. He said, who is this God? Why should I listen to you? And so, back up.
Uh-oh.
Well,
There we go. Pharaoh replied.
He believed in a different God.
Huh?
The Pharaoh believed in a different God, and that.
Well, he believed in a series of different gods.
A bunch of them.
A bunch.
There was a bunch of them, right. And so this one didn't mean anything to him. And to be honest, Pharaoh was a highly educated man. I'll bet he really didn't believe in any gods anywhere, or he He believed he was,
He believed he was the God.
he was a god. So Pharaoh replied, Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting the people from their tasks? Now this is a classic deflection maneuver, right? We're going to quit talking about me, and we're going to quit talking about the subject you brought up, letting the people go, and I'm going to turn this all around. I'm going to put it right back on you. You're the problem here. Mm-hmm. Moses and Aaron, why are you distracting the people from their tasks? Get back to work. Look, there are many of your people in the land, and you are stopping. Remember that phrase. There are many of your people in the land. You are stopping them from their work. The same day, Pharaoh sent this order to the Egyptian slave drivers and the Israelite foremen. So there were some Israelites who were in charge of making sure that the people worked. Mm-hmm. Okay? Do not supply any more straw for making bricks. Make the people get it themselves, but still require them to make the same number of bricks as before. Don't reduce the quota. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, let us go and offer sacrifices to our God. Okay? So what are we seeing here? So from our human perspective, Moses' plan has backfired. Right?
But, well, not only that, why would Pharaoh let his workers go?
Well,
He's got so much to gain from them being there.
That's true. That's true. Why would you expect Pharaoh to immediately let them go? And that's an important point, and we're gonna discuss that a little bit deeper as we move along here. But the plan backfires, right? Moses and Aaron, and we'll see this. This becomes obvious here in Scripture. They walked in there and thought, let my people go. And Pharaoh's going to go, sure, 3 days? I'll declare a national holiday. We can wait 3 days. Go ahead. All right? But it doesn't. All right? Pharaoh's reaction is one of complete derision and anger. Now, again, I want to remind you something we've discussed earlier, right? The fifth column. You might know what the fifth column is. Have y'all ever heard that? The fifth column?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's a fear of a, quote, fifth column. This phrase, fifth column, originated in the Spanish Civil War back in the 1930s. And it referred to a group of people waiting to attack from inside the country when there was an attack from outside the country. So it would have been citizens or people inside living that would have turned and attacked, right? Because if you're living in the country, what do you know? You know where all the infrastructure is. You know what the emergency procedures are. You know where everything is located. Where's the armory, right? And so when a military force attacks from without, you attack from within. That's a fifth column. Those, what we would call traitors, living inside the country. Yes, sir?
Well, we call sleeper cells now.
Sleeper cells. And so you remember then that we talked about the possibility that historians are discussing that the Pharaoh, when Joseph came into the country, was not Egyptian descent, that this very thing had happened once before. And we saw a change in regime, and so now the Egyptian descended pharaohs were back in charge, and so they are naturally a little bit worried of history repeating itself. And we see a little bit of that when he says, there's a lot of you in the country. And we've seen that 2 or 3 times. Matter of fact, that's how Moses came to be, right? Is they said, kill all the male children. Kill all the male children. Why? Because they're afraid of an uprising. They're afraid that if someone attacks these Hebrew people, they will throw in and our country will be lost, okay? And so that's what the fifth column was. So Pharaoh's reaction then was to create more work, so there was no time on the part of the Hebrews,
Well, they are heroes.
They are heroes, that's true. But there was no time on the part of the Hebrews to become subversive, right? So one of the things I do is I make you work from sun up till sundown, from Cain to Cain. And when I finally get done with you, you are so tired, you're just going to go sleep.
You don't think about anybody.
You don't think about anything else, right? And I'm done, I'm going to sleep. I have done that. I have worked on jobs where we're working 16, 17, 18 hours a day, and I don't even eat. I wouldn't even eat. I come home and go straight to bed because I got to get up. I got to sleep fast because I got to get up early and go do it again. Go do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. Finally, I had to tell my mama, I said, pack me 2 lunches. One if I can eat at noon and one I can eat at 6 in the evening because I'm dying here, right? And you just get so tired. You just get so tired. And so that's what he's doing, okay? Now the other thing, well, let's go on. Let's look at what else he said. Pharaoh's still talking. Load them down with more work, make them sweat. That will teach them to listen to lies. So the slave drivers and the foreman went out and told the people, this is what Pharaoh says. I will not provide any more straw for you. Go and get it yourselves. Find it wherever you can. But you must produce just as many bricks as before. So the people scattered throughout the land of Egypt in search of stubble to use as straw. Meanwhile, the Egyptian slave drivers continued to push hard. Meet your daily quota of bricks, just as you did when we provided you straw, they demanded. Okay? Now, Satan's tactics have not changed in 6,000 years. He does what he's always done, right? Because it works. It works every time.
Why change it if it's...
Yeah, why change it? So I want you to think about something for a minute. I heard this today. I thought it was very good. When God made Adam, he put him in the garden. Why didn't Satan attack Adam? Adam was a one-off.
A what?
A one-off. There was just one of him.
Yeah. Okay.
There wasn't going to be no more Adams. Adam was it. Right? He went after Eve. When he made Eve, that's when Satan showed up. He went after Eve. Why? Why did he go after Eve? 2 reasons. First of all, Eve was given as wife to Adam. So there was relationship. And Eve was the final part of the puzzle that created the family template. And the family template, mother and dad passing down faith to their children, was a self-fulfilling, population-growing legacy. And he said, plus the fact that God wants this plan to succeed, so I've got to fight against it, okay? And I thought that was really good. And so what we see here is that any time God has a plan, Satan is going to use a crisis to distract you. Right? Now remember, what was the reaction of the people of Israel when Moses and Aaron showed up and said, God sees you, and he's aware, and there's a plan in action. Remember what they did? They worshiped. They bowed down and they worshiped God. All right? So keep that in mind. So here Pharaoh creates a crisis. He's going to distract the people. I find it unique that he said, now they will not have time to listen to lies. Right? What is it about religion that creates in people hope? Jesus used this phrase, right, when he began his ministry, his very first sermon. I have come to proclaim the year of the Lord, to set free the captives, to set at liberty, right? Liberty is in true religion, right? When we begin to worship God, we become free. Now, that has real world
Worldwide.
impacts, right, worldwide, but it also has a spiritual impact because it insulates us, it protects us, it gives us recourse or strategy against Satan. We're set free from death, if you will, okay? And so Satan will always get a crisis. I don't know how many times I have watched people come through the back door, couples, individuals, in some kind of existential problem. You know, the marriage is in trouble, my job is in trouble, this is in trouble, and they come in and God begins to heal them, right? But it's not overnight. God begins to heal them. And then some crisis hits and it blows them apart, and out the door they go, never to return, right? If Satan can attack the marriage, Satan can destroy the family. If Satan can destroy the family, he can cripple the church. If he can cripple the church, he thwarts God's plan, right? It's the old story, right? When the angels were looking at God's plan, he had it all laid out. God has said, you know, Jesus will die on the cross. And then the people who have accepted Jesus and accepted the blood and become born again, they will preach to others. And then those people will preach to others. We are direct descendants of the apostles, right? And one of the angels says, but what if they don't? What's plan B for getting salvation to people? God said, there is no plan B. This is it. This is the best way, right? And so we have to carry this message, right? And so when we get occupied dealing with a crisis, right, we start to focus on ourselves, not on God, okay? And like I said, I've seen it. People come in, they start to get cozy. Satan creates a crisis in our lives. Ephesians 6:16. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Paul taught us that, right? He said, this is how you deal with crisis in your life. Just like Satan's strategies to fight with us haven't changed, God's strategies on how to deal with Satan haven't changed. Okay? Now, what strikes me about this verse, and yes, this is a little bit of a rabbit trail. I'm sorry, but I'm not. Okay? What strikes me about the imagery here is I like the King James. In the other translations, it uses the word extinguish, which is good. But quench caught my imagination. It caught my attention. Okay, and so in the mind's eye, the word quench refers to the way you treat metal you've just taken out of a forge. So the quickest way that I can illustrate this is, how many of y'all have seen an old Western movie with a blacksmith?
Oh.
Yeah, with a blacksmith, right? Mm-hmm. And so what is a blacksmith? He's got a hearth or a forge. Sometimes there's a bellows, right? He's doing this thing.
He's getting that metal hot.
And he's getting it really, really hot. He reaches in with a pair of tongs and he pulls out a horseshoe. It's just a bent piece of metal. He takes it over and he hammers on it a while. He holds it to the horse's hoof. Then he goes back. He puts it in the forge, heats it up, hammers on it. What's he doing? He's shaping the horseshoe.
To the horse's foot.
Right. He's shaping it to a horse's foot. When he gets it right where he wants it, what does he do with it?
Puts it in water.
Puts it in water.
Ducks it in a bucket of water. Right? That's called quenching. Okay? So this is just a window into the way my mind works. All right? So when that iron is soft, it can be made into any shape desired. When one is satisfied with the shape, he quenches it. Think baptism.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it suddenly becomes hard. Right? But all you have to do, see, once God gets you where he wants you, all Satan's got to do is create a crisis. All he's got to do is turn up the heat. and you're going to get soft again. And then he's going to try to beat you into the shape he wants. Okay? And so the fiery dart creates the crisis. It creates the forge. Okay? And that applies the heat to our souls. Now, it's our faith in Jesus Christ. Remember? What is it that we take to quench the fiery darts of the devil? The shield of faith. Faith quenches the crisis, okay? And it's not that faith, get this, quenching didn't happen quenching happened to the iron bar, but here when it says it's going to quench the fiery darts, if the fiery darts are the forge, the place where the heat originates, the quenching takes the heat of the crisis away. But we, being the target, we might still be a little warm for a while. We'll slowly dissipate that heat, right? Because God doesn't want us damaged. So faith doesn't take the heat off my soul immediately. It ends the heat at its source, where that fiery dart has come from the devil, and it stops that crisis, okay?
That's us putting on God's armor.
That's putting on God's armor, exactly so. Exactly so. So, by doing that, we are, if we can survive the crisis, we are not being led by Satan. But if we begin to pay attention and react to the crisis, right? What are we doing? We're following Satan's lead. Let me give you another example, right? So in the final days of Jesus' life, Jesus was telling his disciples, I have to go to Jerusalem. There I will be offered. I will be sacrificed. I will be killed. Remember what Peter said? No! This is not going to happen. Right? Typical Peter fashion. Right? Mouth in gear. Not thinking.
Hot hit.
That's why I like Peter, because that's the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
What did Jesus say?
Get behind me, Satan.
Who?
Satan.
Satan. Jesus didn't speak to Peter. Peter spoke to Jesus. This will not happen.
He spoke to the
Jesus
devil
turned and spoke about what Peter had said, but he did not speak to Peter. Get thee behind me, Satan. Right? Fiery dart coming in, trying to create in Jesus a soul that would be malleable. But Jesus used the shield of faith, right? And he didn't quench Peter. He went right to the source, the forge, the source of the heat, and said, get thee behind me, Satan. You do not lead me. I follow faith. Okay? So y'all see where I'm going there. Okay, now, I've gone all that way around to say that at this point the Hebrews have not yet developed faith. They have little faith, itty bitty, teeny tiny. It's 400 years old. Been a while. Okay? Their attention is quickly turned from the worship of God for remembering them in chapter 4, verse 31, to their own troubles, or what the cause of those troubles might be. And says, then they whipped the Israelite foreman that they put in charge of the work crew. Why haven't you met your quotas either yesterday or today? They demanded. And so the Israelite foreman went to Pharaoh and pleaded with him, please don't treat your servants like this. Wait, what? Those guys are, they're pleading for mercy. They beg, we are given no straw, but the slave drivers still demand, make bricks. We're being beaten, but it isn't our fault. Your own people are to blame. And Pharaoh shouted, you're just lazy, lazy. And that's why you're saying, let us go and offer sacrifices to the Lord. And now we see the real point. He's trying to drive from them this crisis. He's trying to drive them away from God. Every crisis you will ever experience in your life, the intent of that crisis is to drive you away from God. If if your husband or your wife, your spouse says, that's it, I can't stand anymore, I'm leaving you. Trying to drive you away from God. If your kids acting up, trying to drive you away from God. Trying to get you to quit following Jesus, quit following God, and start living according to your own wisdom, to culture, to society's wisdom, okay? Pharaoh continues. Now get back to work. No straw will be given to you, but you still must produce the full quota of bricks. The Israelite foremen could see they were in serious trouble when they were told, you must not reduce the amount of bricks you make each day. And as they left Pharaoh's court, here we go, they confronted Moses and Aaron, those two preachers, those dadgum preachers, who were waiting outside for them. And the foreman said to them, whoa, may the Lord judge and punish you for making us stink before Pharaoh and his officials. You've put a sword into their hands, an excuse to kill us. You preachers ruined my life. Right? That's what they're saying. You preachers, it's all your fault. And who are they worried about offending? God?
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh. You're making us stink before Pharaoh. Look, if you have a good report before God, who cares what anybody else thinks? God will make sure you have favor where you need favor here on this earth. Right? But you have to be pleasing to God. What if all your life you baked God apple pies? Big, beautiful, juicy apple pies. I mean, the people would tell you, these are the best apple pies I've ever had. And you died and you went to heaven. And you got up there in front of heaven, and God's looking at you going, you know, I don't like apple pie at all. Wait, what? How? Right? I'm not saying God doesn't like apple pies. I'm sure God's okay with apple pies. My point is, we spend a lot of time doing for God what we think God wants done, instead of getting in the scripture, getting in prayer, and asking God, what do you need done? Doing what God wants us to do instead of what we think God wants us to do. And that's what we see here. The crisis has separated the people from their newfound revival. And who are they blaming? The preachers. Moses and
Anybody
Aaron.
but themselves.
Everybody but themselves. Not one of them stopped. Now, and I'm going to cover this in a little bit. Oh my goodness. I'm going to try to get through all this. It's a little bit after. Is everybody okay? Do we need, I can pick this up. We got to go 3 weeks because we got VBS coming. So if you give me about 10 minutes, I think I can finish. Is everybody okay?
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes? 10 minutes, which really means 15, which means probably 20.
Go for it.
Robin's over here going, no. Okay.
Well, you haven't said I'm closing yet, so.
You gotta make a point.
I don't know, my wife is in the back, so when I see her coming to the door, I'm going to be like, go back there, I'm busy doing what God wants me to do. Okay, so, but look at this next one here. Finishing the story here. Moses went back to the Lord and protested. Why have you brought all this trouble on your own people, Lord? Why did you send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh as your spokesman, he has been even more brutal to your people, and you have done nothing to rescue them.
It wasn't time yet.
Ooh. Moses.
That's what we're about there.
Moses lost his mind too. Okay? So I want you to think about something real quick. I want you to take you back. You remember what God's plan was? Way back at the burning bush in chapter 3. Moses is talking to God. What did God say? But I know that the king of Egypt will not let you go unless a mighty hand forces him. So I will raise my hand and strike the Egyptians, performing all kinds of miracles among them. Then at last he will let you go. So do you see the language here? Okay?
Did it
Mighty hand.
take a while?
Ah, very good. It's going to take a minute.
It's not just going to be like,
Mighty
tomorrow
hand.
you get to leave.
At last, right? What did Moses think? Obviously, from the verse we just read, he thought he's going to walk in there and go, let my people go. And Pharaoh's going to go, you bet. What did the people think? Oh,
They
this
were gonna
Moses
believe
character,
it.
look, he can do a thing with his hand. Woohoo, woohoo. Pharaoh's going to love that. We're out of here. And then when it didn't happen, when it created a crisis, where did the people go? Right back to God. This is your fault. What did Adam do when Eve got him kicked out of the Garden of Eden?
It was her fault.
Went right back to God. That woman you gave me.
All her fault.
Never mind, I was so lonely, I was crying at night. Never mind that I roamed around the garden completely bereft of human relationship. No, you gave me the wrong thing. It's all God's fault. That's where we ended up, okay?
It's all human choice.
Huh?
It's all human choice.
Yeah. Moses and Aaron told the people, in verse 30, chapter 4, verse 30, they told the people everything God told to Moses. They told them this. It'll take a mighty hand. Pharaoh's not just going to roll over and play dead. We're going to have to lean on him a little bit. And the end result will be that he will let us go. But it's going to take a minute. But what? They went from
You're going to have to go through some things.
They went, what's the expression? They went from the frying pan into the fire?
Mm-hmm.
Why would God do it this way? Huh? Why would God?
There's got to be
A lesson.
a lesson in there for you, for them to learn.
Wisdom. Wisdom speaks. Okay. So what we see is there's no understanding either on Moses, on Moses' part, or the people that heard the word of Moses. They didn't understand times would get a little tougher before they got better. Okay? But why would God do it this way? Well, he's got to teach some lessons, doesn't he? Why would he allow Pharaoh to be so stubborn, so mean? He was just mean. Right? Can't you just see Aaron's wife? I don't understand why Pharaoh was so mean. Right? Okay.
Well, if you wonder, God could teach Pharaoh this anytime.
Well, so that's right. That's right. So, why? Why is God orchestrating it all this way? Well, there's a reckoning for Egypt that's due. There's a reckoning that's due. The children of Israel were not treated with respect and with kindness. Okay? They were stolen from, basically, abused and used. So there's a reckoning. But there's something else in play here too. All right? God's people need a little bit of developing. They're just a little out of focus. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The Hebrew people that are alive now have only heard the stories about Yahweh and how he dealt with Abraham, Jacob, but they do not know God. They've heard the stories. Now, if I sat down with each one of you and I asked you, can you show me an example in your life where God has worked something out for you, where you have seen the hand of God move in your life, and things might have been, you got great favor from somebody. It might have been an actual, honest miracle of mind-blowing proportions. But we can all generally point to something where we say, I know that was the hand of God. I know. 400 years, all the people have the stories, right?
They don't have enough.
It's like this dear sister was telling me her great-grandfather was a Texas Ranger, right? She has all those stories, but she doesn't know law enforcement today, right? So the stories are just that, just stories. Something in my past. I tell the stories again and again. They help me, but I have no connection, no real connection. And so they do not know God. Remember what God said to Abraham. This is an everlasting covenant, he said. I will always be your God and the God of your descendants after you. Remember that this promise, we talked about this. This is not a promise of ownership. It is a promise of relationship. I will be your God. You will be my people. It isn't implying we're going to own one another. It's implying relationship, right? If you're married, what does this ring mean? This ring doesn't mean servitude, or better not.
Means
guys.
togetherness.
It means relationship. I'm in a relationship. This is the token of my relationship. Except when I'm working on the car, right? And I take it off so that the token of my relationship doesn't get bent or damaged in some way.
Skin.
Or my finger. Right? I worked as an electrician for many, many years, and I didn't wear a wedding ring. Woo! Say that 3 times real fast. Because I was always in a hot panel. But when I quit doing that, Don was like, are you going to put your ring back on? And I said, sure. And then it wouldn't go over that knuckle. And I was like, So we had to go get them resized. Okay? But it's a promise of relationship. God wants relationship. How do we get relationship with God?
This right here.
Last page. How do we get? Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. They must learn to trust, have faith.
We have it here and here.
And here and here. We learn it and we live it.
And we believe it.
That's right. We learn it, we live it. Okay? They must learn to trust, to have faith that God is greater than anything that we will face.
We are His children.
That's
Well,
right.
God will get us through.
How do we learn that God is greater than anything that we might face in life? It's very simple answer. Don't hurt yourselves. Huh? To witness. Oh, you're close. You're really close. How do we learn that God is bigger than anything we will face?
Faith.
We have to face it.
Faith.
We have to experience it. We have to live it. In other words, I know that God is bigger than me being unemployed. How do I know that? I've been unemployed. I have to go through it. You see what I'm saying?
Well, sometimes
Yeah,
those
exactly.
experiences
It's
are
the
You
same
gotta
thing.
get big enough, step up and go through the motion to get your job done.
So they must learn to trust. The people must learn. God is developing a spiritual nation, not just a nation of people with common family roots or ancestry, but He must develop a spiritual nation. And so they must learn to have trust in God. 1 John 4:4, you are of God, little children, and have overcome them, because He who is in you is greater than he who is in the world.
Right.
I have relationship with God. When I have relationship with God, my faith is that God, through my relationship living in me, is greater than anything I will face. What tied the Hebrew people together was, yes, family history, an ancestry, but it was also God. What made America great was we didn't have family history. Ain't none of us in here from the same family. But it was a desire to be free of government entanglement, and I'm waxing a little patriotic, but it was also something else. It was a desire to worship God in a free and open atmosphere. Okay? And finally, to your point, God's people must learn to be patient. We can have all the faith in the world, but if we don't learn to wait on God's timing,
You know, patience of Job, like patience of Job.
patience of Job, exactly so. And look, I know there are all kinds of verses I could have picked, so if you have a favorite, that's fine, that's good. But I didn't want us to be here till midnight going through all the verses. Veronica's back
Well,
there.
that's the main
Thank
one.
you, thank you. Okay, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, tests, fiery darts. Okay? Knowing that the testing of your faith, which we just saw in the bullet above, produces what?
Patience.
Patience. Produces patience. Okay? So God has to bring the children of Israel, and we're going to go, when we come back after VBS, we're going to go through all the plagues, and we're going to look at all the plagues and why the plagues, those plagues were chosen and those plagues were chosen, so on and so forth, and we'll look at all that. But they have to go through this, and the reason they have to go through it was just demonstrated to us. They have no patience and very little, if any, faith. Okay? And so,
How about next Wednesday, what are we doing then?
ma'am,
What are we doing next Wednesday?
VBS. I think we're decorating next Wednesday.
Oh, we're decorating.
VBS is the Wednesday after.
Okay.
And then the next Wednesday, I think, is
Is it state convention?
state convention or?
No, that starts Thursday for the pastors, Friday for the general.
Oh, okay. There's something, I was told 3 Wednesdays. So, anyway, so our next episode is in 3 weeks. We will hear our hero say, anybody want frog legs? Okay.
I'm not
Cajun.
Frog legs. I could do without that.